And while you may think it's just the Christian religious centers, no. Back then, growing up in town, I would hear there was a mosque in town. I can't remember if it was on Niger Street, but it was in town. I could hear when it was time for them to wake up and pray. I could hear it from as far as Bernard Carr Street. The mornings are usually very quiet, so any sound that is loud can get to the farthest distance. And you see, people were reluctant to wake up, but then that sound helps them wake up. For those who were reluctant to. For others, it disrupted their sleep. And well, we made good of that situation, relied on them for our alarms. So back then, when we didn't have mobile phones like we have now to set alarms for us, once we hear that sound from the mosque, from their there's one loudspeaker. I don't know. It's not a loudspeaker. It's a let's call it a loudspeaker. It's round. It's usually hung somewhere and it reaches far distance. So that was the alarms we had back then. And we have lived with it ever since. But does it mean that it is okay to continue to disturb the peace of the neighborhood solely because you are carrying out your religious practice? You see, while it may seem a bit difficult for places of worship to not cause noise pollution during their activities, would stopping them from building or renting spaces within residential areas help? Think about it. Now, Ogun State has sealed 3 religious centers for contravening its law on noise pollution, and they fined the government repeated orders on pollution. The 3 worship centers are Christ Apostolic Church, Fountain of Faith District Headquarters, Bogumi, Itedo Alafia Community, Bode, Olude, Ambassador of Truth Assembly International, and Salvation Ministries, Kofoji Olobi Drive, Adigbe GRA, all in Abeokuta. They may have received several warnings and maybe did not adhere to those warnings. You see, when your own right starts, that's probably when another man's right begins. Starts and stops. That's when your own right begins. And you know how, in all fairness, you do not use that which is of convenience to you to inconvenience another person. But maybe some people do not just listen. Now, the Senior Special Assistant to the Governor on Environmental Compliance and Enforcement, Farouk Akintunde, who disclosed this in a statement on Tuesday, said all 3 churches were sealed after several warnings and dialogue with them to stop the noise pollution emanating from their worship centers proved abortive. Akintunde said the Christ Apostolic Church was found holding vigils with its loudspeakers placed outside its premises at night, thereby disturbing the peace of its immediate community. The community has not only complained, but has written a strong petition against the church, saying the noise pollution emanating from the church is affecting the health of their members. All efforts to make the presiding pastor and the elders of the church see reasons to stop the pollution proved abortive. Now, no serious government will fold its hands and watch such infractions affect the health and well-being of its residents. From the Ambassador of Truth Assembly, the government said they were equally found guilty of blaring their loudspeakers at odd times aside from the incessant noise pollution during their services, while worshippers of Salvation Ministries Adigbe were said to be unruly and rough-handed government officials when sealing their church. He warned against obstructing government officials from performing their official duties and called on other religious centers against noise pollution, saying the state government will not hesitate to seal up any of them found guilty of noise pollution in any part of the state. Now, I found something else on Premium Times sometime last year that clearly stated that we can prosecute churches and mosques for noise pollution. 2021, I beg your pardon, 2021. This is the National Environmental Standards and Regulation Enforcement Agencies. It has the power to prosecute for noise pollution. Churches and mosques that use loudspeakers without control while worshipping. As with every other law as we have it in Nigeria, and laws as we have it in our different unions and associations and organizations and communities, there will always be people who refuse to comply to certain laid down laws. And it doesn't have to do with religion now. It's a normal thing. All right. Now, when we have discovered that, you see how much you can set laws and you can set penalties for defaulters, they would still default. And by the time they start getting their penalties, you see, sometimes damage has already been done. But is it possible to prevent the damage to the larger society who are direct sufferers of the actions and inactions of these non-compliant citizens? There's no other way to talk about noise pollution and other societal menace caused by individuals, and in this case, religious centers. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? Would stopping religious centers from building or renting religious centers in residential areas help with this problem of noise pollution? Let's talk. 0817 923 0003 and 0817 923 0002. 0817 923 0003 and 0817 923 0002. You see, we have the WhatsApp and Telegram number for your WhatsApp and Telegram messages as well. It is 0809 030 6416. Again, 0809 030 6416. On X, we are at Nigeria Info PH, and our Facebook page remains Nigeria Info 92.3 PH. A call screener is in standby to take your calls first before passing you on to me in the studio. So, like I will always say, when you do call, the first voice you would hear will not be my voice, but that of the call screener. I have Lucky. Okay, we lost the call with Lucky. If you're unable to get us via the phone lines, how about you type a message and send to us on WhatsApp, and would gladly read your messages on WhatsApp. Again, 0817 923 0002 and 0817 923 0003. Drop your comments on X and on Facebook, and I would read them as well.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon to you and welcome.
Yeah, you're speaking with Mr. Lucky.
Mr. Lucky, welcome back.
Please, regards to see, the truth of the matter there is just that let's just be realistic to ourselves. All these things they're trying to copy from Weibo. This is Africa, and we have been known. In fact, Africans will worship God most. At least, government should have respect for God. If there's no for another thing, how many times do churches hold program in a week? Is it not Sunday and midweek? It doesn't cost for stealing churches, all those things. At least if there's, I believe most of the officials in government, they're still church members. At least they should have respect for God.
Lucky, I don't want us to make this about church. Religious centers, including mosques. All right? So don't make this a church conversation.
Okay, there's no problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the impression you corrected.
Mm-hmm.
Religious centers, both churches and mosques, they are meant to. It's a place of worship where we serve God. If there is no for any other thing, they should have respect for God. Muslims worship God. Christians worship God. Me, I don't even discriminate in all these things. They shouldn't even go far filling churches or mosques.
So how do we solve the problem of noise pollution? That's the question I asked. I'm not focused on sealing.
Okay.
I'm asking a question, a direct question, that is.
Now, using this River State as a case study, you know that some churches here, House on the Rock, Salvation Ministry, if you are conversant with all these churches, you see that most of their speakers are inside. They are inside. It's all these people, let's say, all these people that don't.
Okay, I think he's not yet ready to answer the question. So let me go on to Prince from one. Sorry about that, Prince. Daniel from Imo Gates. Welcome, Daniel. Go ahead.
Yes, this is the issue we are looking at. If you listen carefully now, you may hear it on the background, even as I am talking to you. Residential area. I am in my house now. Listen carefully, you will hear music playing. And I don't like it. As to say, one thing now is that the what will I call that's the believers or men of God of today, they will tell you they want to stay within that residential area so that people will hear their loud speakers, like the one you mentioned. We call it horn speaker.
Horn speaker. So, okay,
yes.
Thank you. I was trying to describe it.
Yes. So I don't think today, in this new generation, that we ought to be using like something like that. Maybe because of my age, I don't even like noise. Even in the church, when I enter into the church, I don't like noise. Well, if there is something government can do about it, I think they should. Because
all right. Thank you so much. Prince from Rumamasi. All right. Zion from Jari. Welcome, Zion. Let's talk.
Yeah, this square. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Very well.
Talk to me.
The outright closure is not the best. Rather, a caution should be given to them. Now, it starts from the neighborhood. If they felt this church is making that noise that they don't like, is to approach the pastor, talk to the pastor. This is a residential area. And they now know what to do. On the other hand, most of the complaints, people complain, this church is making noise, is out of bias because that is not their church. If it is their church, will they complain? The answer is no. And number three, most of the cases, the churches were there before registered.
Oh, so sorry, Zion. Now, you said they should complain to the churches. From the report I have before me, they had complained several times. The people that came to seal up, that's the Environmental Compliance and Enforcement, they have several warnings and dialogue. They've warned them severally, they've dialogued with them severally to stop the noise pollution. But you see, all of those things proved abortive. Hence the reason to seal. Now, do not think it is only churches that have been sealed in time past. As at December 7th last year, the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency, LASEPA, has cracked down on noise pollution and environmental infractions, sealing several establishments including mosques, churches, nightclubs, hotels, and a supermarket. This happened in Lagos State. Samson from Abua, welcome to the sunny side. Hello?
Yes. God bless you, my sister.
Bless you too, my brother.
Samson. I'm calling from Abua Udwa in Magoku Dockland.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
Yes, concerning this air pollution, there's one thing I normally keep crying in other radio stations. Because that time you think that your voice, that speaker that you bring out, some people might want to use that moment at least to achieve one or two. But then you could see the speaker, like more especially all these people pushing, and you see some people selling whatever thing they think that they are selling might be their company product.
If they kill mosquito well and the rest.
Will be loud. Disturbing other people. Because you might not know that time you think that you drive your business, you're using it to drive your business. How about the next man? I need that cool atmosphere for him to also to pick an idea to drive his own business. So the government should try and do something concerning this air pollution. I rest my case.
Did you say air pollution? We're talking noise pollution. Now, permit me to add something. I know of some churches that are not within residential areas. You can just think of some of them. You know, some of those churches that went to buy properties in thick forests. Yes, in thick forests. And they have created an entire community. And you may say, it's because they have the money, it's because of the project, it's because it's a big church and all that and all that. But what I'm asking is, some of these churches do not have their own buildings. They rent where these services are held. So someone is their landlord or their landlady, it depends. Some of these churches actually buy lands. My area is a residential area. My road or my street is a residential street. And I don't know who sold the land to these 3 churches on my street. However, I came into that street and met those 3 churches there. And like I said, I am not directly impacted. But this was me overhearing a conversation on someone who could not sleep. Himself and his entire household could not sleep because every now and then they are doing vigils. Is it possible that if we send these people, these religious centers, away from residential areas, because it's not a problem when they are away from residential areas. They don't disturb anybody when they are away from residential areas. It's a problem when they are situated in residential areas. Do you think that will help? Peterson from Dio. Welcome, Peterson.
Yeah, but this noise pollution issue is becoming very serious. And like I even tell you the truth that in my street, there are over 11 churches there.
11? And where is your street?
Yeah.
Okay, you said you're calling from Elechi Street.
Yeah, over 11 churches. And in the compound I live, there are 2 churches. 2
churches in your compound? Hey, God.
Yeah, the compound.
I don't envy you, my brother. I don't envy you.
There's one particular one. That particular church there is like a prophetic church. So always, they always have activities. So you can't even predict them. You can't really predict them. So I think the best solution to this is that the environmental this thing should give them notice. Because if you tell them, they will still continue to look as if you are trying to discriminate them. I'm also a Christian. You can't. The thing is just becoming unbearable. If you just that late at night, you just start hearing different blah 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 noise and prayers and all the rest disturbing you. So I think the government should give notice and start. That's that. Yeah.
All right then. Thank you so much. Nigerian Info, good afternoon to you and welcome.
Yeah, Reginald calling from Chokocho.
Reginald from Chokocho, you're welcome.
Yes, I think the issue of noise pollution within our environment, I think it's still alarming now. Every corner, every street, everywhere you are, you will see this noise pollution everywhere. Even those who are into music, who are selling their music, even the telecommunication agents, even those selling the chemicals they talk about, all of them now have every corner of the community or town. It's been everybody is a disturbing issue. I think we have laws. The state have an issue of laws that regulate or control noise pollution. Just like I am sure it is also there in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So what happened to the enforcement? And you look at in a particular, if unlike where I come from, within my area, within my compound, I have about 3 or 4 churches that is surrounding me. Every day, from Monday to Sunday, if they are not on activities in the daytime, they are there in the night time, from morning to night. And this thing continues to happen. And by the time you talk, it looks as if you are envy of their business. Let me ask you now, Dennis, what about this particular church that doesn't make noise? Is it that they don't worship God? Take Jehovah's Witness, for example. Is it that these people doesn't worship God? Because I am not seeing them joining this issue of using this speaker to create noise within the environment. So I want to say that here that the government should enforce it, ban them, and if they should dialogue with the government, I think it must be a dialogue that every party has to respect.
All right.
Have to respect. I'm not a situation where at the end of the day they are dialoguing with the government and the ban is lifted within the next couple of months.
All right. Double D, what the Muslim people use is not loudspeaker, rather it is called a megaphone. Elder B. All right, thank you so much for that correction. And as from what you said, there is one that used to hold their church every night in our compound. Imagine church in a compound, always making noise every night. After you have suffered in the daytime when you want to sleep, people will be making noise. When you go to meet them, they will tell you that you have tried spiritually and it didn't work, that you have come physical. Look at GRA. The white men made GRA for government reserved areas so that government can sink and muscle out policy. But our people have turned it to God reserved area. If you go to Britain, the people that brought church to us, if you pass church on Sunday, you won't know it is a church. Very silent. Chisom from Momagwa says, how about churches on campuses close to hostels? Residential areas. What's a residential area? Place that people live. A place where people usually live. It's a residential area. Good afternoon, my name is Charles Kelechi. In this issue of regulating religious centers over noise pollution, it's quite complicated. The mosques have a horn speaker above the building and you will hear it by 5 a.m., 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. every day. So how can it be regulated? In the said Ogun State, how many mosques have been sealed? Concerning churches, they should have the speakers inside the church and not outside the church, including the mosques. The government should not be biased over this. Thanks. Didi, this church behind my house in Eneka. There's this church behind my house in Eneka. The noise from their loudspeakers became a great source of concern for the area. They refused to lower their noise despite entreaties from the neighbors. Immediately fuel subsidy was removed, they couldn't buy fuel anymore and the noise stopped immediately because PHED hardly supplied power here. Are you sharing a testimony? Because that sounds like testimony time. Didi, okay, I think I've seen this one. This one says, good afternoon, Didi. There's no how this conversation would be had without sounding like an attack on religious bodies. But I think the regulation of the usages of musical instruments in religious centers is the way out. The usage of horn speakers, especially by mosques and displaying of speakers outside church buildings, should be prohibited. And sound engineers should be trained to limit their sound to the confines of their buildings. Annette, send that in. Eric Chukudima says, good afternoon, Didi. I live with nuisance of noise pollution from my next door neighbor whose family clap hand all night, especially the woman of the house. The man also uses a listed type of generator. I had reported to the River State Ministry of Environment and they were cautioned. Still, the man and his wife have continued the nuisance. If you're just joining us, welcome to the conversation. What are we talking about? Religious center and noise pollution. And while I agree with the person who sent a message stating that there is no how we would have this conversation without it seeming like an attack on religious centers, the idea is not to attack, it is to do the right thing. Because I believe that even scripturally, it has been stated clearly to do the right things at all times. Right? So while it may seem like you're serving a divine being, wouldn't it also make sense to serve the divine being rightly and not constitute a nuisance to other individuals? Now let me say this. I do know that sometimes when some of these religious bodies have their speakers and the noise is loud, they think it is going to help them win converts. Because someone who is just passing by would hear the pastor preaching or hear the singing and say, let me stop by this place. Hence the reason they do that. But this is 2024. And the truth is there are better ways to evangelize and win new converts than constitute nuisance. Now, this has nothing to do with whether or not you're a Christian, whether you are a believer or not. The same goes for any other religion. You cannot, because of your prayers, praise and worship, cause noise. Sometimes you even go as far as blocking passage, causing traffic, an inconvenience to others just because you are having your religious activities. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem like the way to go. Everything should be done in a fitting and orderly manner. If you ask me whether churches and mosques are meant to be sited away from residential areas, but the fact that some of these religious centers set up their places of worship without getting proper permits, but when the governments decide to go after them or when individuals that they are inconveniencing file a petition against them, they'll be shouting that they are being persecuted. That was how their Lord Savior was persecuted. Would you term that persecution? In the same way some churches engage in vigils and deprive people living in that area of sleep. Some mosques also started in residential areas when they blast their prayer calls in the wee hours of the morning. They deprive people living in that neighborhood of their peaceful sleep. So let everything be done in moderation. I mean, that is the right thing to do. Or is it too difficult? Let me read some of your Facebook messages as we try to round up this conversation. So this one is from Dalema. I have always thought that Sundays are the noisiest days of every week. Every street corner is a worship center with large speakers mounted here and there, even with a space not even up to a room apartment with less than 10 members inside. The preacher still shouting on top of his voice just to get heard, all in the effort of soul winning. Sometimes it seems like it is just too chaotic, to say the least. Good afternoon, Didi. Mr. Zion said something about being biased, and it's true. Right now, I'm just asking myself, is my church's speaker loud or not? I remember some years ago, my friend told me that once his father confronted the church opposite their house about the noise pollution, and the next morning being Sunday, they were going to their own church and overheard the pastor using his father as a prayer point, saying he came to challenge the church and they should pray against principalities and powers. They should please reduce the volume of their speakers if it is situated around a residential area. Thank you. Let's say, Didi, if we don't make noise in our service, God will not hear us from heavens. You know, we Nigerians are far, far from God, so we have to make loud noise for him to hear us, unlike those in the Western world who perhaps are close to God. Why do I sense sarcasm? Ikwante Moses says, religious centers and noise pollution can be a complex issue, as religious practices often involve audible expressions of devotion such as chanting, singing, or bell ringing, which can potentially contribute to noise pollution. However, it's important to approach this issue with sensitivity and understanding. On one hand, the religious centers play a vital role in fostering community and spiritual growth, and their activities should be respected and accommodated. On the other hand, excessive noise can be a disturbance to nearby residents and the environment. A balanced approach could be encouraging religious centers to adopt noise-reducing measures, example, soundproofing and scheduling limitations, implementing noise regulations that consider the needs of both religious communities and nearby residents, fostering open communication and understanding between religious centers and their neighbors. Ultimately, finding a harmonious solution requires empathy, understanding, and a willingness to compromise. Good afternoon, Didi. Good afternoon to you too. Someone says we should not concentrate only on worship centers. Noise pollution is found everywhere in our neighborhood. Visit Room Okoro, you will hear different sounds, both from business people using speakers and ones from drivers. There should be a holistic approach towards eradicating noise pollution. Thanks. And the final message I have here says, hi Denise, good afternoon. Noise pollution is a Nigerian thing. Have you ever been to a noiseless Nigerian party? The mosque across the road does it 5 times 24/7 starting from 4:30 a.m. Fortunately, no church around here with such. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, says the good book. Is that it? We know to do the right thing. We know. How about we start doing the right thing? I end with this gist. It's a gist, right? Someone once told me how the neighbor would always make noise in the compound. And he talked and talked and talked. He had spoken to the landlord several times to talk to this person. The person did not hear a word. So this guy went to buy a generator. And there's something in a gen that if you take it off, the noise increases. He removed it. Faced the generator towards his neighbor. Whether there was light, there was no light, he would turn on the generator. And the noise, the whole compound could not bear it. Ladies and gentlemen, guess what? This guy came to knock on his door, so I appealed to him to do something about his gen. He clearly refused. And that was how this other neighbor that was constituting nuisance with noise stopped. Do the right thing.
We talk about everything.